As a quick content warning, there is going to be discussion of the recent death at Jackie and Shadow's nest, as well as some graphic content on the video. I will put additional content warnings on screen before showing particularly sensitive video clips. However, if this topic as a whole is upsetting and you don't feel like you're in the right headspace to be able to listen or watch, please feel free to step away. It's been kind of a tumultuous few days at Jackie and Shadow's nest, where an overnight snowstorm left one chick missing who we later found out had passed away. Shadow removed the third chick's body from the nest bowl, and later on Jackie removed the body from beneath their stash of prey and ate parts of it before flying away with it. Given the series of events that have transpired, there's been understandable emotions all around. Many of us care a lot about the well-being of animals and the livelihood of these birds, so many of these reactions are obviously understandable. As someone who's been observing and documenting nature for years now, I wanted to share some of my thoughts around what happened here and what it means to love and appreciate the natural world. This is all, of course, only my point of view, and yours might be very different, and that's okay. And I hope that someone might find something they can take away from it. Nature isn't always picturesque and pristine, though it may be presented to us that way through movies or polished photographs. That doesn't take away from its marvels or its wonders, but there's a tendency to try and sanitize it for the wider audience. Given the rapid development of human society, most of us are unusually disconnected from the natural world. We tend to prescribe human opinions onto the realities of nature and anthropomorphize animals to the extent of prescribing human thoughts, emotions, and morals to them. And everyone is guilty of this at some points. I'm certainly guilty of it too, but it is something to be aware of. This isn't to say, of course, that animals don't have emotions, or rich, complex internal lives, or that they aren't extremely intelligent. But their experiences are very different from that of human beings, and it is often detrimental to forget that perspective. To love nature is to love it for what it is and all aspects of it, and to not try to make it conform to a human worldview or logic. In my opinion, there is no ugly part of nature, not really. At worst, it is amoral, not immoral, and prescribing human morality to it is kind of a futile attempt. I think when it comes to death, modern-day humans are quite separated from the reality of it. It's obviously not something many of us like to think about, unless we are suddenly forced to when it comes to accident, illness, or injury. We have largely removed ourselves from the natural food chain, so the days of hunting for our own food and being hunted by other predators are mostly long behind us. For this reason, the abundance of death in nature and how it plays out is sometimes shocking or traumatizing. We're not used to seeing this cycle of life and death in the way that it plays out all the time in the wild. We hide our own dead, embalm dead bodies to make them seem as lifelike as possible. We separate human bodies from the soil and detritivores and decay, and that way it sort of symbolizes how we've separated ourselves from the cycles of nature entirely in some ways. I don't blame anyone for not wanting to see these things play out. I don't think it's any moral failing if you set your boundaries. I think that's a perfectly okay thing to do, not wanting to see a chick die or see its body be taken away by its parents. I'm mostly approaching this from the perspective of being non-judgmental towards what we see and observe before us, because the world is a big place. And ultimately, although humans have an outsized impact on the environment, we are still a part of nature. And that means embracing it for what it is and loving these animals with a measure of respect and non-judgment. Nature brings me a lot of joy, but I have also felt grief and sorrow add injury and depth, and I think all of these emotions play a role into the richness of the natural world around us. That isn't to say that my heart hasn't hurt watching certain things unfold in the wild, but there is a necessity for me to bring an aspect of humility and open-mindedness and realize that I'm not some superior being looking down on these creatures, but that I'm one of them, and to be there as a witness is also to be there in humility and respect. I've seen a dead baby crow be dragged away and eaten by seagulls as the crow parents dive-bombed them in distress. It really hurt to see, but I also knew that the seagulls needed to survive as well, and they had their own chicks to feed. The dead body will be recycled back into the natural environment and in its own way help support new life. I never really get used to it or desensitized because each event is meaningful and emotionally impactful in its own way. But at the same time, it is not really for me to judge. All of this being said, I don't think it's necessary to repress or be ashamed of emotional reactions towards things happening in the wild. I think it's all very normal. Emotions like grief, disgust, fear, they aren't inherently bad things. They're just things we feel. But I think it's healthy to be thoughtful about them as well, to process them in a healthy way, and to be able to reflect and grow. It is undoubtedly a tragic situation what happened at this nest, and I think it's perfectly normal to grieve and to be sad about these things happening because it is a sad occasion. It really does remind me of the fragility of life and how much we may take it for granted. When it comes to nature, there is a lot that humans don't necessarily understand, not even experts. Wildlife rehabilitators try not to intervene unless absolutely necessary. And this isn't from a place of apathy or cruelty, but from a place of respect and the necessary humility it takes to understand that humans don't always know best. Sometimes we can do more harm than good, even if our intentions come from the right place. And we have to be able to approach each situation, all of which are unique, with the nuance and thoughtfulness required. The kindest thing sometimes is to let nature take its course and trust that the animals know what they are doing. I have faith in Jackie and Shadow. These animals have evolved to survive in the wild. They are really incredible creatures. It isn't always pretty, of course, and it isn't always joyful. None of this means that we shouldn't try to help sick or injured wildlife, or make genuine efforts to conserve and protect the natural environment. I think that's a different conversation in many ways. I think we all believe in minimizing harm and trying to do the kind thing. There is rarely a perfect right or wrong answer, and sometimes we get it wrong. But ultimately, if we approach all of this with an open-minded kindness, a willingness to learn, to be self-aware and put aside any of our biases, it is a very beautiful thing to be able to observe and be part of nature, and to be able to get a glimpse into the lives of these animals and maybe do some good for them. In reality, it is actually extremely normal for birds of prey and other animals in the wild to eat their own offspring if it has passed away. Once again, I think it's unfair to say it comes from a place of cruelty or any human intentions we can prescribe to these animals. It is easy to see any of these occurrences and animals as isolated individuals, but in reality they belong to a complex and rich ecosystem where everything, life and death, is intricately connected, and one thing cannot be judged in isolation, but can be seen as a part of a much greater whole. And I don't think this takes away from the meaning of each individual, but ultimately enriches them too. At the end of the day, nature is resilient. It finds ways to survive, and as long as it's given the chance to, it has an incredible ability to adapt and grow under the most dire of circumstances. And I think we see this play out through these live cams. When watching the nest, we are a witness to the circle of life and death in the wild that most people are far removed from. In nature, nothing goes to waste. Everything returns back to the earth in some way or another. This little one's remains will return to nature and help others, including Jackie, survive and raise more young. Rest in peace, little one.